Welcome to SF Commercial Property Conversations with Bruce Bean, where Bay Area investments meet expert insights. Get ready to unlock the strategies of commercial real estate success.
So today we have Vish Pagarani with us, and Vish is actually born and raised in Dubai and got over here to the US. He was at Carnegie Mellon for a while going to school, and now he's in San Francisco. So Vish, it's great to have you on. I'd just love to hear a little bit more about your origin story and how you actually got into commercial real estate.
Hey, Bruce. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, would love to. So grew up in Dubai, went to high school there and moved to the US for college. Went to Carnegie Mellon and, studied information systems. Been investing and looking at real estate for the longest of times. My focus has actually been on the residential side, but been investing in real estate for the last 5+ years. Typically looking at single families, condos, and now kind of expanding onto the multifamily duplex kind of realm. My interest in real estate really started with family. I had family involved in real estate in Dubai for the longest of times. But what really gets me is how real estate is transforming now with technology. I think a big crux of kind of the discussion that we had prior to this was the tokenization element. We're kind of in this stage of new technology changing the landscape. We're going from this very analog means of real estate transaction to this new set of ownership driven innovation coming down from the tokenization of real world assets. And that's been an intense fascination of mine. We're coming to a point now where real estate is changing, where you can buy shares of real estate as easy as it is properties. And, that involvement is something I'm very bullish on.
Yeah, no, it's going to change the whole landscape. I mean, as we talked previously, Robinhood kind of led the way on the stock side, and now it sounds like several companies are starting to move into the real estate world, and tokenization is becoming a big part of that. So that's very exciting. People will be able to invest probably what is little, who knows, what do you think the smallest token is going to be? Any amount?
I think what I've seen, the smallest token has been about $500.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's coming from a company called Lofty based out of here in the US. But I know back in Dubai, we've just this past week launched a new true tokenization structure with this company called Pripco, which is super exciting. And they launched with about 2,000 dirhams being the minimum token, I believe.
Wow. And so how much is 200 dims?
2,000 dirhams
1,000.
is we're divided by like 3.6 to get to USD.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's about $500 or whatever, $600 to $800 somewhere in there. So, wow. So that would kind of break open the whole real estate world. So then it becomes a matter of trying to pick which building is going to get you the best return, right?
I think in an element of that, it's commoditizing what a lot of real estate investors have been doing for, centuries before us. I think the most interesting part of this is actually on the property owner side. And this is kind of where my central thesis and, majority of my focus has been is as an owner, real estate is such an illiquid asset. And we were discussing this before, but, in Dubai, your typical hold periods are about 3 to 5 years. And that's kind of just given the macroeconomic trends of us being more new developments and off-plan properties that take typically 3 years to develop, and then you kind of sell it off. And so that's a typical cycle. Imagine that breaking down and having much faster transactions. It opens up this realm for property owners to get liquidity faster. Let me walk you through a few use cases I've kind of seen in the Middle East or in Dubai specifically, where a lot of property owners would purchase these properties. And they would have unexpected payments. They would have other situations that arise. And essentially what would happen is that they need to preemptively sell these property before you hit, your maximum ROI that you're targeting. And the reason for that is they need liquidity. Imagine a world now where that is no longer a case, where now you can sell off 20% of your property, 30% of your property in order to suffice that liquidity issue that you have without, giving off the remaining majority share that you want to keep because you believe it's a targeted bet. This is a good investment that will have great cash on cash return or great IRR. That's the world we're going towards, and I think that is extremely exciting.
So let me see if I understand the structure here. Just in your example, let's say where a owner wants to sell off 20%, so he would tokenize, say, 20% of his capital or his equity into tokens, and then that could be sold off in sort of would it go through the stock market? It wouldn't go through the stock market. It'd be a different form. It'd go through one of these apps, right?
Yeah, it definitely will have to go through a different platform. And just to kind of clarify that, you would tokenize the entire property, not just the 20%, right? You would tokenize the entire
Okay.
property and then sell off whatever share you want.
Oh, I see.
And
Okay.
let me give you another example. This is something that I seen a family friend go through a couple of years ago. They bought this property now in Dubai. It was about 300 dirhams per square foot.
Okay.
Dubai's property boom hit, and this was during COVID, where the property prices were skyrocketing. Between 2020 and 2023, Dubai's property market increased at, I want to say, about 55%. If you look at Europe during that same time, it was like negative 2%. I think New York was like 2%, and other areas in the US ranging from 2 to 10%, depending on the market, right? The US is huge.
Yeah.
Dubai was 55%. And so had this family friend that came in, bought a property at 300 dirhams per square foot, had some liquidity crunch, and ended up having to sell that property. That same property increased 500% and ended up reselling 2 years later at 1,800 dirhams per square foot.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Wow.
you and I are both investors, right? So we kind of look at this and we're like, wow, like how can you justify looking backwards and this loss of upside and not feel some form of kind of regret going into it. That is something that has been unavoidable, especially when you have a liquidity crunch. With tokenization, with these companies coming in and creating a forum for you to tokenize your property and distribute shares, I think it's super powerful. And issues like this will no longer be the case going towards the future. And I think that's something that all of us should be excited for.
So, just out of curiosity, is there a relevance between tokenization of real estate and the whole Bitcoin world? What's happening? Are they coming together at all, or are they going to remain separate?
So when we look at tokenization, I think the fundamentals are blockchain. And Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. And so I think when we're looking at a lot of people who look at tokenization, their entire they get scared, and that's kind of the faucet of it, right? When you look at the volatility of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Solana and all of these other cryptographies that kind of go up and down, a lot of family offices, real estate investors, and even typical retail investors who aren't as technology savvy, they get scared looking at crypto. Blockchain is a very smart use case of actioning on kind of these issues that we're having within the real estate world. Having a smart contracts in place to ensure these payments happen quickly. So, for example, if you are a property owner and say, I want to sell off a piece of my property, but then you want to add in a buyback clause saying that, hey, I'll pay back this property at X% increase in 3 years to all the people who've invested in this property. Having that as a buyback clause and having it with a smart contract that instantaneously routes that through is very powerful because it reduces the friction of these transactions. Things happen much faster. You don't need to wait for someone to manually change it, and that's what makes this super powerful. Kind of going back to your question in terms of the impact with Bitcoin, these are kind of two separate matters where blockchain is kind of an underlying element that allows these transactions to happen, allows that infrastructure, whereas Bitcoin is a type of cryptocurrency. And of course, a lot of these transactions happen on stable coins. So US has its own stable coin. Dubai is launching, and this might be a rumor, but saw in the news that there is a stable coin on the works, which I think is very exciting. But having these kind of on ramps that converts your fiat currencies, which is like, your USDs, your dirhams, into these stable coins, so these transactions can happen and then reconvert it back. And so for your typical real estate investor, we're only working with USDs or dirhams, but on the back end, it's being powered by these stable coins that are pegged one to one from fiat currencies to your stable coin.
So do you think there will be leases in the future that are actually based on tokenization? For example, say you wanted to go into a building and instead of actually having a lease, you would have an ownership position for a certain period of time.
I think that'd be pretty exciting. I know these kind of rent to own structures have become a little bit more common in the last 5 years, where you would rent in the hopes of one day owning a property. Um, and
Right.
I think those could actually be done without a tokenized backend. Uh,
Oh,
but just given that these structures are coming into place and it increases the frequency of transactions, the efficiency of each transaction, um, I can see that we are in for a lot of innovation within real estate and prop tech as a whole, which is very exciting.
oh yeah. No, this it just opens up a whole new world of ownership and so forth. So it's going to be interesting to see whether the whether larger corporations like EY or whatever they go into kind of a tokenization ownership position or whether they stay in a kind of standard lease. What's going to happen in the future is going to be very, very interesting. As you had sort of laid out, there are three different steps that have happened since the analog world to the kind
Mhm.
of Zip Zillow world to now
Yeah,
this third 3.0 session. So anyway,
yeah.
it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens with that. So what do you, given the current situation, what do you think the future of real estate is looking like? I mean, you have a completely different vision of real estate in the future, not, you know, most people are saying, well, we because of the tariffs and so forth, everything's unstable right now, but this actually sounds like a very interesting new world to look at.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's something that all of us should be very excited for, and kind of learn about more before make an opinion in terms of saying blockchain is bad or tokenization is bad. I know cities like Dubai, and I keep going back to this example just because it's my hometown, and there's a lot of exciting news that's been dropping there. But
Mm,
one very exciting use case I can foresee happening is also with developers.
mm.
Typically back home, we would have new launches, and these kind of developers would come in and say, "Hey, we're launching a property," and then it starts this almost EOI process where it's expression of interest. You put down a certain amount of deposit, and then you would get a unit on in this development based on
Oh, right,
uh,
right, yeah.
kind of this like system where it's like everyone's kind of fighting for the good views, the sea facing views, the view of the
Right.
Burj Khalifas, and kind of a free for all there. But with tokenization, it opens up the avenue where a lot of people are investing in cities like Dubai, and we talked about the immense property growth, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so it's a faucet for a lot of U.S. based investors as well, or foreign investors to come in and deploy capital into the UAE because of the immense investment value that it happens. A lot of times with tokenization, it increases the the ease of getting dollars invested into these different developments. And so kind of going back to the developer example, now instead of putting down an EOI and having entire units sold to individual buyers, you can have 10 buyers that buy into a single unit, right? You can have
Oh, right,
20
right.
owners per separate unit. And it lowers the barrier of entry into getting into real estate, which helps folks who don't have enough to put down a down payment or maybe don't have the best credit score to finance a loan over the 30 years. So there's a lot of opportunities kind of coming in for that. And one point that we didn't speak about but is very important is these cross-border transaction. There's a
Mm,
bunch of companies
mm.
now that are using blockchain in order to create a faucet to invest globally easier. So for example, if I want to send money back home, I go in through my PNC Bank or a SoFi or whatever you may have, and
Right.
there's a transaction fee associated.
Mm.
These type of blockchain kind of reduce that transaction fees and costs associated with money transfer across borders, and can open the field up for investors who want to get into different market, and just makes everything a lot easier.
How do you think AI is going to play into all this?
I think AI in prop tech in general is a lot right now. There's a lot of AI innovations going on, and if you just look at Y Combinator or any of these kind of startup incubators, you can see a lot of new prop tech companies coming in. In terms of how AI comes directly into tokenization, I'm not sure, but I can see the data analytics piece becoming, very important. Where
Right.
you'll have these companies that launch with their own tokenized initiatives, and you as a retail investor could come in and say, you know what, let me analyze my portfolio using artificial intelligence, and it would suggest that, hey, maybe you want to diversify your income into commercials or residentials, or maybe you want to look at these type of areas because it's your focus. So for example, it understands your preferences. Maybe you're looking for cash flow market versus appreciation market. And I know we were talking a bit earlier about the deal I'm looking to source in Pittsburgh. The reason I looked at that was because it's a cash flow market. It's better for cash flow, and that's what I'm looking for at the moment. But the way I kind of got to that was, looking at a bunch of different markets, looking at the affordability index, the medium income, the medium housing. And so it kind of helps this prospecting process of finding a market, learning your own preferences, and then suggesting which areas you should invest in. So, for example, if my focus has been 100% residentials, but maybe AI would look at it and say, "Hey, Vish, maybe you should look at commercial properties or data centers, or different types of assets as well." And so that's one way I could see AI kind of putting into play here.
Well, that's interesting. So I have not seen this, but maybe you have. In the legal world, AI will generate its own case studies, and they're not real cases. So I haven't seen on the real estate side where AI would generate its own, numbers. I think they generally will crunch existing numbers, but have you seen any sort of falsification in the AI world of the real estate markets?
When you say create their own numbers and falsifications, are you talking about hallucinations where the numbers are incorrect and kind of misinformed?
Yes, right. Yeah.
I think it's typical that you will have hallucinations.
Oh,
Models, I
okay.
think models are just getting better and better. And even if you're on ChatGPT and you ask it for a question, I know I get frustrated sometimes where I keep on asking for something and you'll get a different response from what you're expecting. But I think it's on those individual companies to ensure the models are there, that there are safety nets in place. Um, but yeah, I think it's just kind of a case where our models are getting much better every single day. And there needs to be proper safety checks in place to ensure that, life-changing amounts aren't being deployed solely on, the AI saying, hey, maybe you should invest in this property. I think it needs to have definitely a robust set of safety nets as well as intuition that kind of goes into play in order to ensure that.
Yeah, you still need to be careful and use
Yeah.
your gut and so forth. So anyway, that's very good. Well, this has been a very interesting discussion. Let's end with a fun question. What's your favorite food or sandwich?
Oh, that's actually awesome. My favorite food is a sandwich.
Oh, oh, good.
Um, and this might be a controversial take, but me and my friends always go back and forth on this. I classify quesadillas as a sandwich.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would say a nice carne asada quesadilla is my favorite food.
I love it. Okay, that's a first. I have not had a carne asada or even a quesadilla as a sandwich. And who in the world, alive or maybe not alive, would you love to sit with a quesadilla and eat?
Oh, I would say Cristiano Ronaldo. He's alive and he's one of my favorite footballers of all time.
Oh, say the name once more.
Cristiano Ronaldo.
Oh, cool. Footballer. Okay, great. Which club does he play for?
Right now he plays for Al Nassr, but it's kind of all up in the air. He's been in United, he's been in Real Madrid. Oh,
Oh,
and when I say football, I mean soccer.
oh yeah, yeah. No, I knew what you meant, but that's good. Some of the audience may not have caught it. So anyway, well, this has been a very fun discussion. I want to continue this discussion in 3 to 6 months and see how this is all developing in terms of tokenization, because I think that world is probably moving very quickly right now.
Yeah, it definitely is. Like the UAE's recently announced a sandbox where they're inviting a bunch of startups to come into the UAE and test their different infrastructures and make regulations around this. I think it's exciting, and in 3 to 6 months' time, we're going to have a very different discussion in terms of where things are going, just because the pace of innovation is nothing short of amazing.
Well, let's figure that out. In the fall, I'll ping you again and we can have this discussion and see where the world has changed.
Sounds like a plan. Appreciate you having me on.
We'll stay on for a minute. And where can people get a hold of you if they want to find you?
Best is LinkedIn. It's at my profile is Vish slash Pagarani, or if they want to drop me an email, my email is visheshpagarani01@gmail.com.
Well, I think some of the listeners may want to talk to you a little bit more about tokenization. So this will be very interesting. Well, thanks for being on.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.